One of the things that's very, very interesting at the moment, and I do feel for you looking for an entry-level role, Donna, at this time, obviously with COVID and everything else happening, all the uncertainty with that, it is really different now than it has been in the past, and it is really hard. I have brought on a lot of entry-level roles, a lot of graduate roles, both through my own companies and working with government and everything else. And there's a couple of key things that I look for. The three that I spoke about earlier, curiosity, integrity, self-learning, are absolutely key as well. But there are some things that will take they will make me notice a CV more than others, and there are ways of demonstrating demonstrating self-learning and demonstrating the stuff that you are doing and that you can doing. But a huge amount of it has to do with networking, and I mean networking as in personal networking, not networking as in IP stacks, etc. When I first wanted to get into information security, I think there was about 12 companies in Australia that had information security or had something to do with information security. And I simply contacted every single one of them and said, hey, can I have a job, please? And they said, no, go away. And then a couple of months later, I did the same thing. And I did that 3 or 4 times before eventually one of them relented and we had a conversation on the phone, and that kind of got everything started. But it's trying to find the personal networks of the people that you know who know others is really quite key. And so, do try and do that. Do try and go through personal networks and professional networks, and when you're going for a role, make sure that you demonstrate that you have really taken the time to understand what the role is. There's a lot of applications that I've received over the years that have been quite generic, and I know that it takes a heap of time when you're going for a role to read into it and to look at it and to go through everything and to tailor your CV. But it's hugely important, and I know that that's not a magic bullet, and there's probably nothing that I've said that that is certainly not rocket science, and there's probably nothing that I've said that you didn't already know. But I did want to make sure that that you got that question answered. One of the things that I have noticed is that there is no shortage of people that want to be in information security. There's no shortage of people in information security, but there's a massive shortage of people in information security that really understand information security and can provide a lot of value. So if you can be one of those people and you can demonstrate that you can provide value, then you will have a rich and wonderful and interesting career.
Yeah, awesome.
Add on to what Declan was saying, like I don't come from a technical background. I do not have a technical background. My background has been all about the business and so on. So my switch to cybersecurity actually stems from the fact that I joined a cybersecurity company initially to look at marketing, and then from marketing, right, I did all the engagements and scripts and so on and so forth with my understanding about the business and the business framework and the business architecture, and also my understanding of technology as a whole. From there, I progressed down that pathway. So when you ask about how do you make that switch, you need to think about switch from 2 perspectives. Number one, switch to cybersecurity from a vendor perspective, or switch to cybersecurity from an end user perspective. Now, from the vendor's perspective, there are various categories as well. You have solutions provider, you have product providers, and then you have the likes of the consultants, the guy who actually goes through the entire ideation process about the framework and what the cybersecurity strategies actually look like. So identify where you're at today, whether the experiences that you have, you can actually take that on board and leverage on that to bring you forth into whichever stream and pathway that you actually want to go into. So Declan is right. You need to understand the job per se. If you're going to the end user standpoint, right, most of the time, and there is a huge shortage of people of cybersecurity professionals. But the thing to bear in mind is the ability to contextualize what you know against the business landscape. So it's very important for you to appreciate and understand the role of cybersecurity to the business landscape. So back to Andrew's earlier point when he asked about what would we look for in terms of giving advice and so on and so forth, right? One of the things I very often also ask a lot of existing cybersecurity professionals to do is not to get so hung up with the types of threats that they are seeing that is coming into the organization and so on, because they need to focus on what we need to do is focus on our sphere of influence. We have no influence over the types of threats that is coming in. I got no influence when a hacker decides to do a ransomware. I mean, I got no influence to tell him that don't do this to me. Give me, a malware attack that is that does just a keylogger, for example, or give me a malware. I have no influence over that. If he decides to go after me with a ransomware, I have to deal with that. But what I can do is focus on my sphere of influence. And the area of my sphere of influence are what are my vulnerabilities? What are my and the understanding of my business workflow, and where are the potential entry points that a protagonist can exploit to get into my system, to get into my company, right? And what can I do to block that? What can I do to minimize that? And think of that not only from a technology standpoint, but also from a people and process standpoint, right? Because we often have this PPT discussion. Very often in cybersecurity, what I find whenever I engage with many of my customers is that there's a huge focus on technology, some focus on people, and not a lot of focus on process. Now, this is not just the security process and the security way of managing policies and to mitigate that, but the business process. So the more you understand these landscapes, the more you're able to contextualize and make that information that you have, that understanding that you have, useful and important in defending against a cyber attack.